Good evening, I'm Christopher Lydon. The controversy provoked by the program Death of a Princess has involved the United States and other governments at the highest levels. The Saudi government forcefully protested the film's first showing in Britain last month, ultimately asking the British envoy in Saudi Arabia to leave and recalling its own ambassador. The British Foreign Secretary sent a note regretting that the Saudis took offense. The British feared a break in their lucrative trade with Saudi Arabia, worth about $2 billion a year, but did nothing to stop the broadcast. The Saudis also protested to the Dutch government, which in turn urged the Dutch television network not to run it. Despite the government request, the network went ahead with the broadcast. By the time the controversy blew across the Atlantic, the concern was Saudi oil. Saudi Arabia is this country's largest single supplier of imported oil. Some public stations decided not to run the film. Then the debate spread to Congress. Charles Bennett reports.
16 American public television stations decided not to air the film. KUHT in Houston, KCLS in Los Angeles, 5 stations in South Carolina, and 9 in Alabama. Mobil Corporation, which provides some $3 million a year to public television for cultural programming, took out newspaper ads across the country questioning the wisdom of running the film. But the First Amendment issue loomed largest when the fate of Death of a Princess was debated on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, which votes some of public television's money.
It seems to me that the decision to show this particular movie publicly is ill-advised and indeed irresponsible in view of the problems such broadcasting clearly will cause for the United States. It is particularly regrettable that the decision to broadcast the movie has been made by an organization which is funded in part from United States government funds.
Do our colleagues wish the Congress to impose censorship on the public broadcasting system to prevent the showing of a film that might be offensive to a foreign country? Yes, the Saudi Arabians are our friends. Yes, we have a strong relationship with them. But they must understand that our traditions in this country are quite different. We have something called the First Amendment to our Constitution, which protects free speech. And our government doesn't have the power, nor does it have the desire to impose censorship on those who would express views that might be offensive to someone else, either in this country or overseas.
Major newspapers overwhelmingly supported airing the film, but public stations across the country received hundreds of letters, calls, and telegrams opposing the broadcast, leading some editorialists to wonder that Americans might be willing to sacrifice some measure of free expression to protect oil supplies. But the great irony of the Saudi attempt to stop the film has been the tremendous advance publicity the protest has generated. It's expected that Princess may have been one of the most watched public television programs ever. This is Charles Bennett.
Last week, the Saudi government told the State Department that it considered the film offensive. The Saudi letter said, quote, "The film shows a completely false picture of the life, religion, customs, and traditions of Saudi Arabia. It also, in many ways, is disparaging to the Muslim religion. The film is therefore offensive not only to Saudi Arabia, but to the entire Islamic world." The State Department passed that complaint along to the Public Broadcasting Service, which decided to go ahead with the show. But the producers said that the film, based on 300 hours of interviews, is neither false nor disparaging.
We have to understand why the Saudi Arabians have been so concerned about the film. That's an index to a very delicate and very sensitive nerve. It points towards conflicts within the kingdom itself. And at this point in time, this most critical time, we need to understand that. If the film sparks that debate, opens up that debate, and I think that can only be in the best interests of the country.
Lawsuits in California and Georgia had sought to prevent broadcast of Death of the Princess. Lawsuits in Houston and Alabama sought to require its broadcast. In all cases, PBS argued, and the courts ruled, that only PBS affiliates, the local stations, could decide whether or not to air it. I'm Christopher Lydon reporting.